Why are some women so confident in the marriage and dating market? A 49-year-old woman nicknamed Little Fairy decided to divorce her husband of over 20 years in order to relieve his pressure, and quickly re-entered the matchmaking scene. She spends half her monthly salary on beauty maintenance, dreaming of marrying a multi-millionaire. If your annual income is less than 1 million yuan, you're too poor to even talk to me. I'm not here to do charity work. In cities across China, there's a silent crisis unfolding. Women in their late 30s, 40s, even early 50s are still single, many not by choice, but because they've set expectations so high that even love can't reach them anymore. It's not that they're bad people. It's not that they don't deserve happiness. But for years, they've been sold a dream, a fantasy, a version of life where success, beauty, and love would come together perfectly, where the perfect man would one day appear and sweep them off their feet. Except that man never came. Beijing has already become a disaster zone for women's partner selection. Although there are 30 million more men than women nationwide, in Beijing's matchmaking market, men who are under 1.8 meters tall, have average jobs and income, and look just average, simply don't bother showing up. They feel it's a waste of time. But women, regardless of their own conditions, always believe they deserve someone better. The result is that there's an abundance of older single women everywhere. Back in their 20s, these women were probably the center of attention. They had the looks, the charm, maybe a good education, a stable job, and a belief that their future would only get better. Some of them rejected good men back then, kind guys with stable incomes, men who might not have been rich or stylish but were sincere. But that wasn't enough for them. They dreamed bigger. They wanted a man with a car, a house, a fat bank account, someone who would treat them like a queen. Why are so many women nowadays already anxious to start blind dating and getting married at 23 or 24? Is 27 or 28 already considered older leftover women? In Handan's matchmaking scene, there really has been a big wave of post-2000s women entering the market. The ones I've come across in this age group are actually very impressive, whether it's their career, height, looks, or family background. As a matchmaker, I genuinely feel that women who are already clear-headed at 23-24 and take the initiative to go on dates with marriage in mind are being very smart. They understand the reality. Finding a partner should be done early. This doesn't mean that at 27-28 you can't get married anymore. It's just that the younger you are, the wider your options, and the higher your margin for error. We've seen quite a few women who come to date at around 28. The lucky ones may quickly find a good partner, but there are also quite a number who spend 2 or 3 years without success, and in the blink of an eye they're past 30. That's when anxiety sets in, afraid they'll truly become older leftover women. The older you get, the scarcer the high-quality options around you become. China's dating market has been shifting for years. The population is aging. The number of women in their 40s who are still unmarried is growing. At the same time, men, especially successful men, have more options than ever. A man in his 40s who has money, a house, and a career can easily date someone 10 or 15 years younger. He doesn't need to choose a woman his own age unless he truly wants to. And many don't. They'd rather start a family with a woman in her late 20s or early 30s than deal with someone who's already hardened by life and comes with a long list of expectations. Born in 1990, I'm 35 years old. I've never been married, never had children, and not even had a partner. I've become what everyone calls an unwanted, older leftover woman. As I get older, my circle of friends keeps shrinking, and I feel more and more lonely. Although my life right now is still fairly comfortable, I can't help but worry about the future. I worry that when my parents are gone, I'll have no home. I worry that if I get sick, there'll be no one to take care of me. If I ever need surgery, there might not even be anyone to sign the consent form for me. I don't know. At some point, I started really wanting a spiritual anchor of my own. I want a child of my own. Sisters, do you ever have thoughts like this too? In Chinese society, the term leftover women was once used to describe these older single women, but now it's become somewhat taboo to say that out loud. There's a push to be politically correct, to talk about female empowerment, and choosing not to marry as a valid life path. And sure, some women genuinely prefer to stay single, but for many, the truth is they don't want to be alone. They just don't want to lower their standards. They still think they can have it all, and that time will somehow wait for them. Older leftover women are really a tragedy. Once a woman is over 33 years old, no matter how beautiful she is, it's basically hopeless. For older leftover women, it's really hard to find a partner. They always say things like, "So many people used to chase me, and they were all such good matches." You always think the best one will be the next one. Then, when your coworkers, friends, and close girlfriends, people who you once thought were not as good as you, end up marrying well, you start believing you'll definitely marry someone 10 times better than they did. Otherwise, you feel like your beautiful face has gone to waste. But after picking and picking, you find that each option is worse than the last. By the time you reach 37 or 38, you might finally choose a divorced man with a child. If his conditions are even slightly better, he's likely more than 10 years older than you. If you can't accept that, then you'll just have to keep waiting until you grow old and have to support yourself in old age. That's probably how your story will end. Meanwhile, younger women are taking their place. New generations of 20-somethings are entering the dating market, and guess what? They also want rich, tall, good-looking men. But they have the advantage of youth. Their skin is glowing, their smiles are fresh, and they haven't yet become cynical. Rich men are lining up for them. So where does that leave the 40-year-old woman who still thinks she can marry a millionaire? Nowhere. She's invisible. Of course, some will argue that men are the problem, that they fear strong women. And it's true that men can age and still be considered attractive, while women face more pressure to marry young. But even with that, the core issue remains. Unrealistic expectations. You can't demand the world when you bring the same checklist as everyone else, especially when you're older and less flexible than you used to be. Well, the ending for older leftover women is definitely having a home but no family. Back then, people believed there were about 30 million more women than men, but based on the number of women in their so-called glory years, the figure is already close to 100 million. In Ningbo, the reality is that there are more women than men, and a large proportion of them are quite good-looking. These women in their mid-30s are the leftover ones, and across all of China, their proportion is actually higher than average. They expect the man's age not to be too old, his finances not to be too unstable, and his personal security level not to be too low, yet they completely ignore the reality that in Western countries, age is a big factor. Since around 2002, they have collectively entered the matchmaking market to fight over men, and these 35-plus women are at a clear disadvantage. Even those who try to find men from other places still haven't faced reality. Like that one woman from out of town who said, "If you don't take me, I'll just casually find some rich guy to go with today." But in truth, those so-called foolish rich guys are extremely rare. For older leftover women marrying outside their hometown, it feels like they think there must be some grand, world-changing scene awaiting them.